Hi, I'm Cassandra Millay, and this is my alternate assignment for Comm Planner Promotion. I'm gonna start with the original article. So the study's rationale I have highlighted here in purple. Excuse me. It says the purpose of this investigation was to systematically review worksite-based environmental interventions to reduce sedentary behavior. They were looking at increased time spent in sedentary behavior, which is prolonged bouts of sitting time, can be recognized as a significant health problem. And sedentary behavior includes activities that involve sitting, low energy expenditure, like television watching, computer use, and driving. And this can actually lead to premature mortality as well as different chronic diseases, including cardiovascular disease, cancers, diabetes, and obesity. The next question was the study's purpose. What were the authors trying to discover? I have that highlighted in blue. They were trying to discover if workplace sitting imposes deteriorous health effects and is positively associated with numerous adverse health outcomes like diabetes and mortality. They were also looking for environmental approaches to inform future sedentary behavior interventions to kind of figure out what works. They were also looking at the effectiveness of worksite interventions that were intended to reduce occupational sedentary time and determine the effectiveness of environmental worksite-based interventions to reduce sedentary behavior and provide recommendations for future interventions. Okay, next was the method section. The question, what is a systematic review? How I defined it in my own words, not defined in the author's paper, was a method for researching an intervention or conduct research that uses steps that can be easily replicated and provide all necessary information needed to continue the study and reduce bias. So the first question, how did the authors conduct the research? A literature search was conducted using the database's medical literature analysis and retrieval system online, Cochrane Central Register of Controlled Trials, and Web of Science. The next question is, what search terms did the authors use? They used a Boolean search, which they used the words workplace or worksite and sedentary or sitting and intervention or program. Filters within these databases were set so that you could only look at peer-reviewed journal articles published within a 10-year time period from 2005 to 2015. And then in types of articles that the author included in their review, there were a bunch of inclusion criterias. They must have been worksite intervention studies. They must have used quantitative design. They must have employed environmental modalities, and they must target sedentary behavior, as well as be published from January 2005 to December 2015, and they must be in the English language. The exclusions were that they could not be non-intervention studies, so they had to be review articles and correlation studies, or they could not be, I'm sorry. They also needed to have a protocol description or developmental articles. They couldn't have, or they needed to, sorry, I lost my place. Interventions did not measure sedentary behavior as the primary outcome, so sedentary behavior had to be the main problem. They needed to modify the worksite environment, so they couldn't just come in and not do anything. The interventions also had to occur at the worksite, and articles could not be published before 2005, or in the following databases, which include Web of Science, Central, and Medline. All right, the next question is, how many articles were included in the final review? Right here in yellow, it says the two authors assessed the methodological quantity of 15 articles selected for review. The next question is, what information were they pulling out of each study? They were using a scale that assesses different quality factors. There were three main factors: randomization, blinding, and withdrawals. And then, excuse me. And then they started asking 10 different questions based on each article to kind of figure out what they wanted. So the first question was the study described as randomized? The second question, was the randomization protocol detailed and appropriate? The third question, was the study described as a double blind? Fourth, was the blinding process detailed and appropriate? Fifth, did the study have a control group? Sixth, was the control detailed and appropriate? Seven, was there an adequate exclusion criteria? Eight, was the intervention used as a therapeutic dose? 9, was there a description of withdrawals and dropouts? And 10, were the data clearly and adequately reported? So these, all of these questions, questions 1, 2, and 3 assess internal validity, 4 through 8 assess reporting, and questions 9 and 10 assess intervention criteria. And then the next question was, what information was the authors pulling out of the article? Based on what I had just said previously and table 1 right here, you can see that the authors were comparing a bunch of different articles. I believe there's 15. I had chose article number 14, but by looking at this table, you can see the program and the target population, the primary study purpose, study design and theoretical framework, intervention groups, duration and intervention activities, primary evaluation measures, and intervention effects. So the next question has to do with the article that I chose. I chose article number 14. Oh, sorry, where'd it go? Just disappeared on me. Here it is. I chose article number 14. It's called Reducing Occupational Setting Time and Improving Worker Health, the Take a Stand Project. It's by Pronk, and I chose this article because it was a voluntary study, which can be found, I have it underlined down here. The study was entirely voluntary. I also chose the study because it was conducted as a non-randomized interrupted time series approach, which you can see up here, also underlined. Where is it? Sorry, just one second. Entirely voluntary. Here it is. We used a non-randomized interrupted time series approach, which is the study which over time different groups go through different levels of exposure. And I also chose this intervention because I thought it was interesting that after the intervention had ended, the researchers actually went back 2 weeks later to see like what was going on, how it continued without the standing desks. And right here you can see it says, furthermore, the removal of the device largely negated all observed improvements within 2 weeks. So I thought that was very interesting, and that's why I chose this article. As for the discussion portion, I have it highlighted in green right here. The question was to summarize the systematic review's discussion and what limitations did the author discuss. So basically, my summary is that they implemented a standing desk protocol with participants of, I have it highlighted in pink. I believe that their N was 55, however, only 34. Yeah, so their N was 55, but they only had 34 employees that actually signed up to participate. So 24 for the intervention group and 10 for the comparison group. The study took place over 7 weeks. Right here you can see by the end of week 7. And up here you can see how it's kind of broken down into week 1. All 34 participants were monitored without intervention. Week 4 were the sit and stand devices, which were only installed in the intervention group, and then a post-intervention period of 2 weeks without intervention for either group. And at baseline, participants perceived their health as very good to excellent, were physically active, reported good or excellent levels of estimated cardiorespiratory fitness. They were normal weight, and they did not report any major limitations on work performance because of physical or emotional health concerns. Let's see. So kind of the end of this study, it was found that sitting time while at work was declined in the intervention group. So individuals who had the sit-stand desks in their office actually were able to reduce their sedentary behavior by 66 minutes per day. And the comparison group actually increased their sitting time over all periods to about like 17 minutes longer than group 1. And then this was able to improve upper back and neck pain from T1 to T2. And at the end of week 7, the intervention group was asked several questions about specific benefits of alternating between the seating and standing position, and results indicated that 87% of people felt more comfortable, more energized, and 75% felt healthier, with 71% feeling more focused. 66% of people also felt more productive, 62% felt happier, and 33% of people felt less stressed as a result of having the stand device installed at their workstations. So the limitations that the author kind of discussed was a failure to document an overall reduction in sitting time, meaning that the individuals were recording their own sitting time. So it could vary depending on if they're writing down the right time, or, you know, like perceiving their pain levels differently than other people. But down here in the limitation section, you can see that it did not allow for randomization, as the group was completely voluntary, so we cannot assume causality. It also allowed a certain degree of bias because, as I had said, the project was solely based on self-reporting. And the study actually had a small number of participants. Only 34 people actually participated, which can limit the ability to apply scientific rigor. And the project was actually conducted among health-conscious individuals. I believe it's called a contemporary workplace, which is like an office setting where you use computers and various different types of electronics to do your work. Sorry, I lost my place. So basically, these people worked in a health field, and they might have been more likely to respond to the intervention because of what they were doing for work, but they may also have been less likely to experience an intervention effect on health outcomes because there was little room for improvement. So these people had good, healthy backgrounds, and they weren't overweight. They didn't have a ton of like back or neck problems. They were all kind of baseline. And this intervention, while it wanted to see if this could impact them, it kind of failed, or was limited when you couldn't really see the difference between the two groups, as those people weren't really experiencing that much pain to begin with. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.